I love that. Give me your definition of a servant leadership.
Well, if I go back to the guy who's impacted me the most in terms of my leadership development is John Maxwell. It was the first leadership book that was given to me back in 1998, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And his definition of leadership was influence, nothing more, nothing less. And as a servant, if we're going to influence others to do things, then we must serve them. Oftentimes, I'll talk about it from a biblical mindset as well. And the verse in the Bible says, ultimately, Jesus was not sent here to be served, but to serve. And those are the lesser of us will reap and enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am so thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the idea of doing business and living life with a purpose. We believe that when we approach our work and our lives with a servant heart, we can truly make a difference. We created this show because we want everyone to be motivated, inspired, and educated to make an impact in your world. We don't want you to keep it. We want you to share it with the world so we can make that impact. I just had a 5-minute conversation with my guest. You're going to love this guy. But while you're listening to him, I want you to think about how you're serving today and what impact you create today. Again, I'm going to circle that keyword of today. I've talked to people who have listened to the podcast and go, I forgot about it, and a couple months went by. Don't do that. And it could be just calling your grandmother or calling your best friend or telling somebody they have a beautiful daughter. Serve somebody today, and guarantee you'll feel great about that. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by our incredible partner, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine being part of an exclusive community of high-income, successful business owners and entrepreneurs from very diverse industries. Together, we are building a thought leader platform to impact and change the world. For more information, just reach out to me and I'll get you that information. With that being said, impact is a big part of my monologue. That's what I'm trying to do with this podcast. But this is a true servant using champions in his business name. You gotta love it. John, welcome to the show.
Steve, thanks so much for the opportunity. Looking forward to our conversation today, friend. I feel like I've known you forever already.
It's been, we could go on for hours, but we won't. We'll go on for a nice 20, 25 minutes.
All righty.
Growing champions. Talk about it. I'm excited to hear more.
Yeah, I appreciate that opportunity. I mean, as I've been an organizer or coaching and consulting company for 4 years now, left the world of IBM and some other large consulting companies post-COVID, like many, made a change and decided to go out on my own. And I was sitting around and I'd been coached by a company called Building Champions before. And my sons were actually attending Liberty University, where my oldest son actually was a cheerleader for the football team there as well. And their theme was growing champions for Christ. And I'm talking to my wife. I'm like, if I get this started, I don't want to call it John Gallagher Enterprises or something like that, or John Gallagher Coach. I want something different. She said, okay, put those two things together and just call it Growing Champions. I'm like, well, that seems almost too simple. And we got to start it like that. But when I think about that champion and having that mindset of a champion and why that word ultimately was so important to me, it was not just about the number of wins that went along with that, but the mindset that comes along with the champion. That they're not going to give up and they're going to keep striving to be more and more successful and have the impact that you talk about each and every day.
Yeah, when you said that, John, I think of Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady. Like them or not, that doesn't matter. They had a champion mindset. All that people helping them, but they got up earlier than everybody. They stayed later. They did the champion mindset, but took actions with that. I love that. But I don't want to disregard growing, because I love that word, because we talked about it earlier about younger people. We can learn from them. Talk about your growing part of it.
Absolutely. One of my core values that I operate under, personal core values, Steve, is growth, personal growth on a daily basis. And frankly, as a leader, growing others, hence the word growing champions. And that I know that growth side, being a lifelong learner, is something that I've committed to. I don't look forward to a day where I say that I'm retiring, if you will, to go forward, but I ultimately want to take care of myself in an intentional way, both for my health, spiritual development, and leadership development, that allows me to grow on a daily basis. You see behind me in terms of video, the books that I read is something that I do on a regular basis. And so I've taken that very important. And then the other side of that, when I do my consulting of growth, is that I want those organizations to grow the leaders in those organizations so that they can have eternal and kingdom impact with the opportunities that they have as well.
Awesome. And you mentioned leadership and leader. I love that. Give me your definition of a servant leadership.
Well, if I go back to the guy who's impacted me the most in terms of my leadership development is John Maxwell. It was the first leadership book that was given to me back in 1998, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And his definition of leadership was influence, nothing more, nothing less. And as a servant, if we're going to influence others to do things, then we must serve them. Oftentimes, I'll talk about it from a biblical mindset as well. And the verse in the Bible says, ultimately, Jesus was not sent here to be served, but to serve. And those are the lesser of us will reap and enjoy the success that's there. And I view that at the same side in terms of being a servant to serve others, seeing them grow. Can be, frankly, as much of a prize for me as seeing myself grow.
Man, you gave me a huge thought when you mentioned Jesus. And I've never thought about this because I always think leaders are always mentoring. And that's what you were saying. Well, Jesus mentored 12 people to become messengers for millions. We could do that too. Of course, not his level, but we could do that as humans, right?
Yes, we could. Absolutely. And you think about those 12 that he mentored as well. I mean, they weren't the elite of the group. He pulled in the carpenters, the fishermen, and those that were just kind of common men, and poured into them, equipped them, inspired them, and taught them to do uncommon things.
Great point. See, that's why I love being a host. I get to learn as well as have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do the sports and business bridge. We talked about sports and we could have talked about sports for hours. I love it and talk about it all the time. What's your thoughts on that with the sports and business?
Well, specifically for me, when I think about sports, so I grew up playing sports, basketball, football, baseball through high school. I was good enough to be able to play in those days. I did not go on to play in college, but I got to tell you, I was competitive, no doubt about it. Those juices flowed into me from a competitive spirit. And when I think about business, I do think competition, while it's not necessarily at the win at all cost methodology, that the competitive spirit inside of business to me is just like the competitive spirit that's inside of a successful business coach. We mentioned a few of those names before we got started. Lou Holtz was one of those, Tony Dungy, and those individuals that used leadership as their primary methodology in which they teach. One of the things, being a West Virginia fan, I love when I heard just a few years ago when new head coach Neil Brown actually presented his coaches with the book, Developing the Leader Within You, and reviewed it with them on a regular basis. So it wasn't just about the game or the sport of football, but it was also about growing individuals that were going to have an impact. One of the most memorable moments that I have is coaching my son's basketball team in seventh grade. And you start thinking about things. We'd sit down at the end of each practice, 6th and 7th graders, and talk about leadership, respect, and attitude, and the way that they approached it. And they didn't necessarily love it at the time, but I remember when one of the young men graduated from high school, and he came back to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I just remember when you coached us about attitude during that." That was 3 or 4 or 5 years earlier. So we never know, again, use the word impact. The impact we're having on folks, sometimes it down the road. But to me, that's the greatest story ever told when you get stories like that of impact being a coach for someone.
That's the power of coaching. You're developing leaders with young people. We need more of that now than ever. Let's be flat out honest. It's this,
yes, we do.
These young generation, they need to lead a lot of this leadership mentality. What is your main focus on your consulting?
Yeah, for me specifically, when I look at working with organizations inside the consulting space, I do it in the form of 4 sticks that I'm looking for. And I talk about the leader themselves. The leader's got to make the decision. They've got to want to change to go forward. And we can talk about that in terms of the 7 steps. But once that leader has made the choice, once they've made the decision that they're not willing to accept the status quo, we have an opportunity. Then we move forward with developing their team and coaching their team with the skills and equipping them with the knowledge that they need to be successful, then starting with implementing the systems and processes that they need to be successful. And that ultimately, those 3 things together, those 3 sticks together, lead to that enduring impact. Oftentimes, organizations will see some intermittent success with some of the things that they can do. But when you get in lockstep harmony and the leader is committed to growing themselves, the organization's only going to grow as far as that leader of the organization grows. John Maxwell refers to it as the law of the lid. And if you have individuals on your team that are growing faster than you are as a leader, you better keep an eye out for that, because they're either going to leave the organization or it's going to be something that you're just not going to be able to capture that success. It doesn't mean you have to be smarter than them at everything you do, It just means you have to be developing your own leadership skills, your influence with them, your vision, so that they can see where you're going as a leadership and be able to follow you, again, to reach that ultimate pinnacle of success.
That's $1 million tip right there for anybody that's a founder, CEO of a business, because you start losing all your staff, your business is in trouble for probably the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I read, and you sent me some information, that you had a childhood event having that impacted your life. I believe your past experiences, not all of it, some live with you. What was the impact you had as a child?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, I love that as a story, and there's so many that could talk. Many people talk about big things that they've overcome. For me, it was simply, being bullied as a child, and understanding that I was definitely different. I grew up in a town that was primarily Italian influence that was inside the town. I loved the food, and I loved all that went along with it. But this tall guy with red hair and a big head stood out, no doubt about it, and became an easy target for that. And oftentimes, if I'm being brutally honest, it was an opportunity for me to then, rather than to fight that, is trying to find somebody else that I could do the same. And I tell you, I look back on that right now in terms of as a child, and ultimately have been disappointed in myself for that behavior. But really thinking about, again, when coaching kids today and observing that behavior, I mean, I've heard you're most powerfully positioned to help the person that you used to be in your leadership development, whatever that means. And I have an opportunity to influence others, and that, whether that's coaching my son's basketball team and not accepting some of those behaviors with regards to bullying or things that are going on, coaching individuals in the church, young adults, or frankly, coaching folks that I've led in business as well, and not allowing those behaviors to happen, or teaching folks what the impact of kindness and influence can be, rather than trying to dominate someone, and how the results can be more significant. It's something that I try from a mindset standpoint not to harp on a whole lot and say that I have a chip on my shoulder about it, but it's certainly influenced my leadership style over the years.
It's in your radar because you experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting you mentioned bully. You're the third guest this last 2 weeks that have mentioned bullying. It's a problem, and especially now with technology.
Different kind of bullying today. The electronic bullying that exists. Exactly. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, social and media. I think kindness is the key. That's the big start of that. Mm-hmm. This has been staring. Now, audience, if you're listening to this podcast and not watching, John's got a great T-shirt that says "excellent." What's your definition of excellence? How do you input that in your coaching and consulting?
Yeah, thanks for asking it. And it is that excellence only happens on purpose. I don't have it quite high enough, but it is. It ultimately, when I think about going in with organizations, I want them to set what they really want their North Star to be. I often refer to it in the framework as their "so that." They have an opportunity to do some work. They know they must change, but it's so that they have that impact that they want to. And that often feels like an ideal state or perfection that they're shooting for. And sometimes that feels just quite out of reach. But going back to a sports analogy, Vince Lombardi had a quote where he says, "You should strive for perfection and strive for that every day. Know that you might reach excellence on the way there." And so excellence is not the end game. Excellence is a place that you get to by doing it on purpose, by being very intentional with your habits and disciplines, and being better at your competition than doing those daily, weekly, and monthly things that you have to do to be successful. And not just at work as well, but in taking care of your own health and taking care of your finances and taking care of your faith development, and all those relationships. Hey, Uncommon Leaders. Hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I believe in doing business with people you like and trust, and not just a company name. That's why a strong personal brand is essential, whether you're an entrepreneur or a leader within a company. Brand Builders Group, the folks who have been helping me refine my own personal brand, are offering a free consultation call with one of their expert brand strategists. They'll help you identify your uniqueness, craft a compelling story, and develop a step-by-step plan to elevate your impact. So head on over to coachjohngallagher.com/BBG, as in Brand Builders Group, to schedule your free call and take the first step toward building a personal brand that gets you noticed for all the right reasons. That's coachjohngallagher.com/BBG. Now, let's get back to the episode as well, being intentional about that. The saying I'd love to say that was really something, but I have a picture that's up in my office, and probably should get a small one for behind me, that says excellence only happens on purpose. And there's a picture, it was from the Liberty University president who posted it on his Instagram page. And it was actually a picture in the background of my son carrying a flag. He was the cheerleader at Liberty University, a huge flag across the football field at Liberty University. So 120 yards each time they scored a touchdown. When he was there, Hugh Freeze was the head coach. They were scoring a lot of points and a lot of touchdowns, and he'd have to run that thing 120 yards through the wind, even through the weather and whatever that meant. And being able to do that was only going to be done through the discipline he had to do to get stronger and be involved with that every day. So it's just a reminder to me that if I'm going to achieve the things that I want to, that I need to do that on purpose and be very intentional with it.
It might be a tough question, John, but I like what you're doing and saying. Can anybody be excellent?
I think so. I absolutely do. Look, here's what I believe. Folks who have good intention, okay, and I think I believe folks have good intention, but they have good intention without discipline. That leads to excuses. But if you have good discipline with good intentions, then that leads to excellence. And so those two things together, those are things that anyone can do. Whether it's becoming a reader. I love to go out. I don't have time to read. But the simple math is this. If I read 10 pages a day, the average leadership book is 220 pages. I can read a book every 22 days. I can read 12, 13 books a year simply by putting the time in my calendar to spend 10 minutes to read 10 pages in a book. Oftentimes folks will say, I'm not a reader. And our mutual friend, Nick Hutchison, would say, it's the $10,000 rule. That if I gave you $10,000 to read a book over the next 30 days, I bet you could get that book read. So if what's more important to you, it's getting your priorities in line rather than sitting down and binging on a Netflix series that's not adding any value to you, or scrolling endlessly through social media in the name of personal development at times, or whatever that means for us. We just become intentional with just 10 minutes a day inside of our space. What that can lead to from a development standpoint is powerful.
Okay, I'm going to recap that again because that's a powerful message. Because the $10,000 is legit, meaning you read 12 books. Are you going to make an extra 10,000? Again, it depends what you sell, but absolutely, probably much more than that.
That's right.
So it's 10 pages a day. Average page is 220 pages per book. That's 22 days to finish a book, about 12 to 13 a year.
Absolutely.
And what do you think most people are reading in a year on it?
Oh, well, I mean, the data would tell you that at least 50% of Americans don't pick up another book after they graduate from high school or college. And that's part of the horrendous part of it. Those individuals that are reading 10, 12 books a year, I think are in the top 1% with regards to individuals who are doing leadership development. There's just not that many people that are doing it. It's hard, but it's not really hard. It's actually simple, and simple is hard because you have to be disciplined.
John, you're brilliant because you just lived your words. It's simple. Can I do 10 pages a day? Was it 15 minutes? Can I carve out 15 minutes and then go watch your Netflix, or scrolling, but get your priorities straight. I'm getting fired up here because I love what you said. When it's teaching me, I'll do a couple pages, but my goal is 10 pages a day. That's it. And I put the book away and then I can do those other things. I always say 1% every day, you get better 1% every day. And there's your 1% right there.
Love that. That's hanging up in the gym over there, which is another one. You want to get better in the fitness world, get yourself in the gym, right? Well, I just don't have time to do that. Well, the heaviest weight that's in the gym is the front door. You just got to get through the front door. Once you're in there, you're going to make it happen. So,
I ran health clubs and I've never heard that. And that's a good one.
Yeah.
And your health as a consultant, if you don't have your health as a CEO, founder, entrepreneur, you don't have a business.
I agree with you 100%,
yeah.
Steve. And I mean, that's part of my story. It was 8 years ago, 2017, I had a health scare and I was 80 pounds overweight. And I just had gotten to the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I walked into a gym that had trainers that I had driven by for years and looked at it. And the first trainer that I came up to, I told her, I said, I need help. I think we need coaches in all those areas that we want to get better at. And over a 3-year journey, I was able to lose 80 pounds and have since kept that weight off over a period of years. But again, because it takes discipline, it became part of my lifestyle. The hashtag I used to use back in that time, something, again, starts with a simple step. What's one thing you can eliminate from your diet just to get you better? And mine was hashtag stop eating French fries. I was eating French fries every day, twice a day on meals and everything else because I loved them. And I still am able to eat those today. But if you eat them 5 days a week, just try 3 days a week and replace those French fries with, lettuce or salad from a fitness standpoint. And again, how I correlate that to business is, what is that French fry in your business that you get caught up in? Is it the emails that you get caught up in that you just got to unsubscribe from 2 or 3 of those emails every day to start reducing the number that you have that can help you in the business side as well?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, the French fry business. I talked to a mentor or a business entrepreneur I was mentoring, he'd watch Netflix on his computer in his office. I'm like, that's a half hour. He goes, only a half hour, but you're not reading a book either.
That's right.
Audience, if you're not getting this, he's really making it simple to grow and make money. That's the bottom line. We all need money. You all are listening to this, one, to be a servant's heart, but that leads to the revenue increase somehow, some way, somewhere, doing the right things. We're coming to the end here. Tell us a quick story of a business you work with, brought them excellence, taught them coaching, taught them growing champions, and how it worked out.
Yeah. So, one of the things in terms of competitive spirit, and I like to use sports videos and short video clips to help make teaching moments possible. And I was coaching an executive team for a large healthcare company, and I showed a video from the movie. I believe it wasn't Courageous. It was Running with the Giants, and it was the same maker of the movie Courageous, and it was about the crab walk across the football field and how folks keep themselves from succeeding at a higher level because they set limiting beliefs in front of them. And I sat that through, and I'll never forget the CEO of that organization in tears after that video was done. And he says that you're exactly right. If we could just take the goggles off where we see our own limiting beliefs that we're only able to get to a certain point and strive again for that perfection that we're looking for, we would get much farther. Look, I worked with that organization for 7 years as a consultant for a large company, and they were able to transform the way they cared for their patients. They were able to transform the results that they had overall, and they were able to transform their leadership into a space. What it really led to with this leader is he retired, and he had written a weekly newsletter for about 7 years with his company. And I was coaching him still even after he retired. He was the CEO emeritus. And I saw the first time his weekly newsletter didn't come out. And I said to the CEO, I mentioned him by name, and I said, "Where's your newsletter?" He said, "Well, I'm retired now. I'm not going to write it." I'm like, "No, absolutely not." I said, "You have to write more now. It's freeing you up from the development so that you can continue to add value, not just to your organization, but now the people out in the community and the country need to hear what you have to say." And he has since put that together where he's been doing it for another 9 years as a retired CEO and sharing that newsletter with folks on a weekly basis. So I love to see the changes of the people. If I could just kind of share one more story, because to me, I refer to it as the greatest story ever told, is that there's going to be a time in your life or somebody else's life where somebody's going to ask you to write down the names of the individuals who have had a positive impact on your life. And for me, that's the greatest story ever told, even though you may never know it, is when somebody writes your name on their list of somebody who's made a positive impact back to servant leadership all the way around the circle. So the question, you have as leaders to be intentional is who's going to write your name on their list. And if you know who that is, you need to go out and start building those relationships intentionally so they can impact that person. It might be a family member, might be a friend, it might be a business client that you're trying to impact to write your name. But that's the greatest story ever told to me.
I'm rarely speechless because the first thought came in. I just got an email 3 days ago. You put us together in an email, introduced them. It was the best meeting we've had in 5 years. Thank you for thinking of both of us. And audience, me and John aren't pumping our egos up. We're just telling you, when you have a servant's heart, it's like Christmas gifts every day. And that's how I relate to it. So thank you for sharing that. And the crab walk video, I'm going to actually watch it after we get done here. That's where the guy sits on top of him.
Yes.
He puts the kid on top of him.
Carries him on his back. Yeah.
Yeah. And the coach is yelling at me. I can't do it. I can't. Audience, please watch that. And I'm going to watch it and save that because I'm getting chills right now. I got a fun question. I always like to end with this great question.
All right.
So we've got a reservation at a restaurant. You do. You got a table of 4. You're obviously going to sit in one of the chairs. And the other 3 chairs, dead or alive, who are you going to invite? Why are they invited? And what food would you order?
Oh, what food would I order? Wow, here we go. Well, I won't say French fries. Probably. There you go, right? see, we're all on the same path now, Steve. Yes. What are we going to do now? Absolutely. Well, I love this question. It's kind of fun and it's always hard, but I mean, look, it feels a little bit self-serving in and of itself, but I would put Jesus at the table in one of those seats. And the reason I say that is, as we talked about that, again, he was able to develop 12 individuals to do uncommon things, common men to do uncommon things. And as you read through the New Testament and listen in, Jesus rarely answered a question directly. He was the ultimate coach. Somebody would ask him a question, and 380 times he was asked a question, and only 18 times did he answer that question directly. Outside of that, he'd answer it with another question. He'd answer it with a parable. He'd answer it with an example of what he had been through inside of his life. And I love that from his standpoint. I just want to learn about how he would be at answering questions. The second person I'd put there with regards to especially things we're going to today is Ronald Reagan. And how was he ultimately the unifier that he was in the space that he was in? I mean, look, he's an actor in movies, and I didn't see all of his movies, Betty Davis movies and all those things, governor of California. But ultimately, as a president, look, people can debate and argue all they want to about who was the best president in the world. But in my time, he's been one of the most influential people when it came to relationships across the board, across the aisle, across the globe. And I think was really powerful, and I'd love to just...
Did you enjoy the conversation? You can watch the full video in the description below. If you found it helpful or inspiring, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You can also follow me, John Gallagher, on my social media channels to stay updated on leadership tips, coaching insights, and more inspiring content. Links are in the description. And don't forget to check out the Uncommon Leader podcast, where we dive deeper into leadership, growth, and action-driven insights every week. Stay inspired, stay uncommon.
Until next time, go and grow champions.